Who do you hang out with? Why do you hang out with them? That's the question on this week's Stoic lesson from our handbook, a handbook for new Stoics. It's Rob, it's Amy, it's Sierra, Painted Porch Strategies. Hope you're doing fantastic. This is a question I don't think we really ask ourselves a lot of because we just have friends and we hang out and we sort of get into a routine. But one of the major questions I ask is, what are you getting out of these friendships? And if you're a Stoic and you're thinking like a Stoic and practicing your Stoicism, that is one of the main questions you should ask. Because as they say, it's kind of contagious. I like to say language is contagious, but other people's behaviors are contagious as well. So I'll give you an example, and I would love to hear from you ladies what you took away from this lesson before we get down to the nitty gritty. If you hang out with a friend who likes to drink, maybe you have an extra drink or two while you're hanging out with them. Maybe you don't necessarily want to, but you don't know the best way to say no. That behavior becomes contagious. Epictetus said, refuse the entertainments of strangers and the vulgar. But if occasion arise to accept them, then strain every nerve to avoid lapsing into the state of the vulgar. For know that if your comrade have a stain on them, he that associates with him must needs share the stain, even though he be clean in himself. But being clean in yourself doesn't matter when you're around the stain, if you will.
Yeah,
Moral stain.
I wrote this a different way. I said, standing too close to others stink, you smell too.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I wrote.
Or guilty by association.
Guilty by association. Yep. Yeah, they say right here, you are the company that you keep.
So what
That's
were your
right.
main
That's
takeaways from this? So did anything, Sierra, jump off the page to where you were like, wow, this is caused me to think about things in a different way?
Well, it definitely reinforces that idea of the law of attraction, right? So the people you hang out with, the messages you surround yourself with, the thoughts that you put into your head, that helps manifest what is really happening. So, if you, and I love how they talk about, if you purposely hang out with somebody who helps you to be better, not necessarily like somebody who's richer than you, but like somebody who makes you a better person, somebody who helps challenge you, or just positive people. Like if you hang out with positive people, you're more likely to be positive yourself. It's sort of like it's just like love begets more love, or hate begets more hate. It just continues on that attraction, which I find absolutely to be true.
Amy?
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. It kind of ties into what we've talked about the last couple weeks here about, what are you, the quality versus quantity aspect, and what are you spending your time consuming, and whether that consumption is, what you're reading, what you're watching, but also with whom you're associating with, and what it is you're engaging in when you're associating with them. One of the things that really stood out to me with this, though, is, it just said basically try to avoid as much as possible those whose character and habits drag you down, make you step down a rung. But what they say is that it's important that you shouldn't feel superior to
Yeah.
others when you make this choice. In fact, on the contrary, recognize that you are flawed. So it's really a reflection of you. Recognize that you are flawed and you need to avoid the temptations to be dragged down. It's not that that person is a good person or a bad person, or they're doing good or bad. It's that their behaviors are a weakness in you. And so you need to be more mindful about how you're engaging with them. Because the reality is, they even talk about here that not all poor company can or should be avoided. You just need to be very mindful of what is or isn't happening when you are engaging with those other people. It's kind of like putting up your protective layer, right? So that way, or rubber and glue, right? So you have the
Yes.
rubber bounces off you, so you're not absorbing and taking on that less desired behavior. So that was my thoughts on it.
Which, yeah, and that's an important point to make. So it's not as if you have to shed your friends who may drink too much or swear too much or may tell off-color jokes. You just have to be aware enough so that you don't slip into those modes. And they
Correct.
asked us to get specific too, but I had trouble doing this because I didn't necessarily want to write down what I was thinking about, because what if somebody comes across my book? Very unstoic of me, I understand. But at the same time, the big takeaway is, what is your goal? So if you want to be a business leader, who in the business community, the business leadership roles that you admire, do you want to hang out with? Because there's only so much time in the day. I mean, that's another main Stoic lesson. That is one thing we all have in common. No matter where you're from, what your economic status is, male, female, your racial background, we all have 24 hours in a day. How do you spend your 24 hours is really what matters. So if you're trying to build a business, if you want to be a media leader, you want to be a YouTube star, how do you get in front of people that are doing those things that you want? How can you learn from them, absorb what they have to say? So that, I think, is what my main takeaway was here, is not just from a business standpoint, but what values do you admire the most? And if it's a work ethic, find people that have a work ethic, because that will push you when you hang out with people that have this work ethic that you so admire. If there's values you don't want, and there are friends that you have that may have these, just like Amy said, how do you not partake in that part? How do you be you, but not have an extra drink? Or how do you say no to certain things?
Right. And that's really the key focus here is, you can't always avoid those situations or those individuals, and I don't necessarily, I think I've even said this before, I don't subscribe to the idea that, oh, just, cut the energy vampires out of your life. No, just find a way to protect against them sucking out your energy. That's really it. It's not about them, it's about you. You need to figure out how to better deal with and not sink down to a level that you don't want to. It's not about, I don't want to hang out with so and so because he's always negative. It's, when I hang out with so and so, I want to choose to not allow his negative thoughts to infiltrate my thoughts. So it's not about them. It's about what you are choosing to do or
And
not.
how do you,
Well,
if they're gossipy or something?
a person only has as much value as you give them.
Mm-hmm.
So an energy vampire can only suck it out of you if you allow that person to do it, or if you allow that person enough power to be able to do it. Nobody can make you have a bad day. It's you allowing that person to make you have a bad day. It's really it's you have to be your own gatekeeper, right?
Correct.
So that's one of my takeaways from this lesson is, yes, sometimes you can cut out the people who tend to be not as stimulating. Or if you can't cut those people out, how can you shift either your reactions or the power that you assign that person in order to gatekeep your energy?
And what I think, what a better approach that is, honestly. It's easy to put yourself in I'll say, in a protective bubble, or say, you know what, I'm going to cut this person, I'm going to avoid them. It's easy to avoid. It's much harder, but a much stronger representation of your character to confront and handle it, to not let it infiltrate you. It's a lot easier to just lock yourself away from the people that, it's like the idea of current world, like social media blocking people. Oh, I'm going to block them, or I'm going to unfriend them. That's easy. That's a cop out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The better thing is to let them and let that flood in, but be very mindful and checking yourself to not allow it to affect you. It's so easy nowadays for us to all stay in our little protective echo chamber bubbles, right? It's a lot harder to actually confront things that make you uncomfortable.
Well, and if you want to use that as an opportunity, a leadership opportunity, because there are
Mhm.
so many people that are in their bubbles, who is the person that can access as many bubbles as possible and communicate with the different thoughts and beliefs in all of those bubbles? Because we are, at least the way social media and the corporate media are driving us this way, because it benefits them. More listeners, more loyal fans. So that means for them survival. So I understand why they're engaged in that. But at the same time, there's a big gap of a bunch of people like us that are kind of in the middle, that have a little bit of beliefs over here and a little bit of beliefs over here, and can't quite understand why people would be so insular. How do you get those people that in this opportunity, right? So if you avoid it, to your point, and if you avoid the friends that are negative, how do you try to teach them stoic lessons along the way, for lack of a better term? How can you instill upon them a calmness, a chill, to get them out of, because there's also a way in this
You
who
have a
you hang
duty.
out with.
Yeah.
If you're the, I don't want to say better person, but you're stoically more advanced than they are, how do you impart this wisdom upon them, so that maybe that they next time around gossip less, drink less, make better decisions? So there's also an opportunity in these relationships that we can sometimes overlook when avoidance becomes the preferred option.
Yeah.
That's true. There's an opportunity, like you're saying, there's an opportunity to reach somebody. I mean, you could be the light at the end of somebody else's tunnel.
Versus closing the door on them.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. But I think the key thing, the biggest takeaway here is that it's not about them. It's about you. I love it. They keep repeating here. It is focused on yourself. It is not an excuse to judge or berate someone else. That is not what this is about. It is about you taking ownership of your reactions to your points here, what you have control over. No, the only person uh, that can have you have a bad day is you. You decide. You decide whether or not you're going to uh, get drawn in and wear the stain, or I like the stink, wear the stink of someone else when you associate with them.
Yeah. And one of the big things I'm trying to avoid, I'll just make it personal for a second, is talking negatively about people. It's the old ad, don't talk about people behind their back. Well, it's really a stoic lesson in the sense that, why would you say negative things about people just cuz? But that is how a lot of people relate. I mean, we live in a world of critics. You if you are on Twitter at all, Twitter is basically a cesspool of criticism. There's no positive. It's very hard to find positive reinforcement on Twitter. It's, this person's awful. This person is worse than that person. I'm worse than this person. And it's this,
Cancel so and so.
it is. It's really, but it's an interesting study if you know what the approach is, and you have to try to, it's a challenge to try to be a different voice on Twitter than just a critic. So,
Well, I always think about, I mean, it's a very old ad, but you reap what you sow, and people who gossip or people who say, who say negative things about someone else or judge someone else, I just think there, what do you think there is a pretty high probability that the same thing is being said about you. So if you're spewing it, someone else is saying it about you. So don't spew it.
what
And lower your
I just got called
probability.
something the other day. You give opinions out for a living. People don't always like your opinions. So what did she call me?
Oh.
I can pull it up. It was something to the effect that I'm a ugly little freak or something. I was like, wow, going right for it on that one. So this is a
Wow.
woman who has not liked me for I don't know what reason for a very long time. So
She doesn't know you.
Yeah, exactly. I've never met her. She just listens to
You
the
know,
radio.
on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So every 6 months or so, she comes up and tries to throw a dig my way, and I'm like, that says more about you than it does me. So.
Yep. As I always like to say, don't feed the trolls.
Mm-hmm.
but it's just, again, the moment you open your mouth to convey a judgment or a criticism of someone else, just know that it's going to come right back to you. And if you want to, if you don't want to be talked about, don't talk about other people
Yeah,
in a negative way. If you want to be talked about in a good way, sure, why not?
sure. Well, or you could also, I know one of the things I always think about for my own personal moral litmus is, if I'm talking about somebody who's not there, is this something that I would say to their face if they were there? Or if it isn't, should I continue saying it?
Amen. Yep.
Or if I'm saying this not to somebody's face, it's perhaps something that I need to address face to face with that person. And sometimes that's a hard question to ask yourself, is, if I'm talking to somebody else about that person, about something that's unresolved, perhaps that's my cue that I need to resolve that with that person, or let it go, one of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, honestly, I think that's a great litmus test here. It's kind of one of two things. If I start to talk about somebody and they're not in front of me, should this be something I say to their face, or is it something that I let go? Those are really your two answers, because the third answer
Right.
is not acceptable, which is, I'm going to keep talking about them behind their back.
Right. And I think if it is something that you need to let go, I'm a big proponent of letting it out so that I can let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my person that I confide in usually the most is my husband, my life partner. And so sometimes I will literally say, like, this is bugging me about this other person, but I need to let it go. So I'm just going to get it out. And when I'm done getting it out, I'm over it.
Yep.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay, goodbye.
Yep. Or you clock it and be like, I need you to give me 3 minutes, or however long. And then once that time is up, we're done.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about it anymore. It's done. It's released.
There's the perfect episode on Parks and Rec where pregnant Ann Perkins, the people in her workplace do this wine and cheese thing where they get to like bitch about their problems and then they're over it. And she runs amongst them doing it. She's like, I want in on this. And they literally start the clock and they're like, go. And she starts just ranting about all the things that she hates about being pregnant. And she gets it all out. And then she does this big, feels so much better.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So if that's what you need to release it and then move on, I have an exercise in my course that is called Dragon Breath, and it is precisely that, where you literally it's an emotional vomit. But I've taught this for years when I used to teach in-person yoga classes, and I would say emotional vomit is just like regular vomit. When you get it out, you don't take it back in. Like, it's out. You flush it down the toilet, you put it in the garbage, it's gone. So make sure if you're going to release that you're not going to keep, don't put that back in your mouth. Don't keep consuming that. It's out.
Yep.
So I would highlight this and say, step one, to get back to our Stoic lesson, because this is all amazing, is we've identified multiple layers here. Number one is identify who you hang out with. Step two is why. And then what do you get out of that relationship? And is there any stain or stink to that relationship? Because most probably have some.
We're all human.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So identifying it, knowing what it is, so that when it happens, you recognize, like, oh, it's getting a little funky in here. So either it's time to walk away.
Get out your emotional
Febreze.
Lysol.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there's an option there.
Your virtuous Febreze.
Mm-hmm. Or figure out how you need to let it out, right? So it's this virtuous cycle of start to finish, and it comes around. So if that is a friend that you want to continue to hang out with, now you know what the stain may or may not be. Maybe you're the stain too. And what are your own stains? What are you bringing that stains relationships to? Mm-hmm. Because again, it is about you, as Amy said, but it is also recognizing your stain, your habits, and are you the one in certain relationships that brings certain things, brings some negative attitudes, brings the extra drinking, brings the extra swearing, the putting down people, whatever it is that you identify as the stains. But it's that process that you have to go through that will help you determine A, who you want to hang out with, B, do you need to shed some friendships? Because every now and again, you need to. You just move on, and that person doesn't grow, and you're growing, vice versa. It just happens. It's a natural part of friendship cycles. So you can start identifying all these things based on this lesson.
And I think the key thing is like literally, like, in this, it's a chart, man. I mean, there's a chart here. So do the work, identify the people, what the influence is, what type of behavior or mood or the way you start thinking, what is that doing when you are interacting with them? And can you limit the exposure? But if not, having a very clear implementation intention. That's been a big thing through all of these lessons, is set yourself up for success. Just like last week, when I speak with my father, do not gossip, right? So this week, it's the same principle. When I am hanging out with fill in the blank, do not drink more than 2 beers or whatever it might be, or don't drink that day, or just be okay with saying, no, I'm good, right? Whatever it might be, whatever the situation is, having a very clear intention. So that way, the next time it happens, you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation.
Excellent work.
Final thoughts.
I don't have any.
Well, interesting. As I was writing this out, they asked us to talk about people we see often.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, it's not a whole lot of people that I see in person, but I definitely addressed the social media aspect.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I see via their posts on social media. And so I thought, well, could unfriend them, I could block them, or I could just choose to keep scrolling.
Exactly. That's so key. You can choose to keep scrolling, or when you come across them, you just take a moment and you wish them well. You're like, I hope you get through whatever you're getting through, whatever you're trying to figure out. I wish you well. Just keep going.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to stop and engage every time.
No. You don't always have to comment.
Nope.
It is very revealing what people post on social media in so many ways. Well, I mean, that's just reality, which is fantastic. Here's another option too. I was just thinking about, if, like, obviously Amy showed she didn't write anything down. I didn't either, for fear that someone may come across this book. Here's another option for you. If you wrote it down on a piece of paper, you could always burn the paper or put the paper somewhere else. So it doesn't have to be in your book. So if you're hesitant to do it but want to go through the exercise and writing it down actually helps you, have a different approach. Try to find something that works for you, where you don't have to necessarily keep it in your book and put it on your nightstand in case Amy wants to read it. And I wrote Amy on here, and she's like, "What'd you write me in the book?" Not that she would, but because I would just tell her. Yeah. But I'm just saying, if you have sneaky people that go through your stuff. Mm-hmm.
Oh, if you have
You're not going to sleep yet. We're talking about
problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But this was week 21, a handbook for new Stoics. This was a very good lesson. Thank you, ladies. Sierra, Amy, Rob, Painted Porch Strategies. Next week number 22, ties into something we said today. It's called Rolling with Insults. So we look forward to seeing you then. We would love for you to join us. These are amazing lessons. There's so much fun to do, and there's so much fun to do in bigger groups. So come on in, join our discussions, be a part of them. Let us know what you're thinking as you go through these lessons as well. So until next week, thanks for joining us on the porch. We'll be back on the porch, sitting around discussing insults next week.
Ooh, let's plan some insults.
I got one for you. No, I'm kidding.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
Exactly.